She signed the rental contract without asking questions. When you are choosing between a roof and your next meal, curiosity becomes a luxury you cannot afford. Isabella Moreno had 3 eviction notices folded inside her worn backpack, a rejected art portfolio under her arm, and less than $20 to her name. The email had sounded too simple, almost suspicious. A private room for $1 a month. Utilities included. Quiet environment. Preference given to artists. She should have known it was impossible. But desperation has a way of silencing logic. The mansion stood at the end of a forgotten street, hidden behind dead ivy and rusted iron gates. Stone walls rose like the bones of an ancient beast, weathered by centuries of rain and neglect. The paint on the wooden shutters peeled away in long, curling strips, revealing silvered wood beneath. When Isabella pushed open the gate, it screamed in protest, a sound sharp enough to scatter blackbirds from the dead oak tree in the yard. The air felt colder here, heavier, as if the house itself was holding its breath. She climbed the front steps, each board groaning beneath her weight. Her art case bumped against her hip, a dull reminder of everything she had lost. The gallery rejection. The cafe job that barely paid. The ex-boyfriend who had laughed and told her she was wasting her life chasing dreams. The key was exactly where the email promised it would be, hidden beneath a cracked clay pot filled with dead soil. Her fingers trembled as she slid it into the lock. The door opened silently. Inside, the house smelled of old books and something else she couldn't name. Not decay. Not dust. Absence. Like a place where no one had breathed in a very long time. Hello? Her voice echoed uselessly through the empty hallway. The contract said the landlord lived on the property, that she would have the entire second floor to herself. Yet the silence answered her like a living thing, pressing against her ears. She climbed the staircase slowly. The carpet was worn thin in the center, as if someone had walked the same path for decades. At the end of the hallway, one door stood open, warm light spilling through the crack. The room was perfect. North-facing windows. Wide open space. Wooden floors scarred by time but strong. A small bathroom attached, white tiles, an old clawfoot tub. Completely empty. No furniture. No clutter. Just space. Isabella set down her art case and turned in a slow circle, already imagining her easel by the window, her desk against the wall, her mattress in the corner. She could make this work. She had to. By sunset, her belongings were stacked neatly. 3 boxes of art supplies. 2 suitcases of clothes. A cheap rolled mattress she'd bought from a sidewalk sale. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. As night fell, the mansion seemed to settle around her. The wood creaked softly. Shadows stretched along the walls. She sat cross-legged on her mattress eating cold pizza from the box, exhaustion pulling her eyelids down. She fell asleep before finishing the second slice. The cold woke her. It started in her fingertips, a sharp chill that crawled up her arms like frost on glass. Isabella's eyes flew open. The room was darker than it should have been. The streetlight outside her window cast no glow. Someone was standing at the foot of her mattress. A tall shadow shaped like a man, perfectly still. Her scream died in her throat. Fear crushed the air from her lungs. The shadow did not move, did not breathe, yet she could feel its gaze pressing against her skin. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't hurt me." The shadow tilted its head. When it spoke, the voice sounded like wind passing through empty rooms, soft and hollow and painfully sad. "I could not hurt you even if I wished to. Not yet. Not until midnight." Then the shadow became solid. A man stood before her, tall and elegant, dressed in clothing from another century. A high-collared shirt, dark vest, tailored trousers. His long black hair framed a face so pale it seemed to glow in the darkness. But it was his eyes that stole her breath. Silver, reflective, like moonlight on water. Beautiful and terrifying all at once. "My name is Lord Alaric Nocturne," he said calmly. "I am your landlord. And I fear I was not entirely honest in my advertisement." Isabella scrambled backward until her spine hit the wall. Her sketchbook fell from her lap onto the floor. "You're not real," she whispered. "Ghosts aren't real." He smiled, and it was the saddest expression she had ever seen. "I wish that were true." He stepped closer. His feet made no sound on the wooden floor. "I have been dead for over 300 years, he continued as if discussing the weather. "Most of that time I exist between states. Unable to touch. Unable to feel. Unable to truly interact with the world of the living." His silver eyes met hers, heavy with centuries of loneliness. "But every night, at midnight for exactly 1 hour, the barrier weakens. I become real enough to touch. real enough to remember what it felt like to live. Isabella's heart hammered violently. This had to be a hallucination. Stress, hunger, exhaustion. Why me? She asked shakily. Why rent me the room? Why $1? Alaric turned toward the window, moonlight passing through him faintly. Because I am tired of being alone, he said quietly. Because artists see what others cannot. Because your application said you paint things that do not exist. And for $1 I am not buying a tenant. I am buying the chance for 1 hour of company. 1 hour where I may pretend I am still human. The confession hung between them. Isabella should have run. Called the police. Screamed. But she recognized desperation when she saw it. She had been living inside it for months. How long do we have? She asked. Until the clock strikes 1. She hugged her knees to her chest. I'm too tired to run. If I'm hallucinating, I might as well commit. And if you're real, I've had worse roommates. For the first time, Alaric laughed. It sounded warm. Human. I promise I am an excellent landlord, he said softly. I do not make noise. I do not eat your food. And the rent is very reasonable. What's the catch? His smile faded. At 1 a.m. I become shadow again. I can watch. I can listen. But I cannot touch. I am asking you to share your space with something that should not exist, because I cannot endure another century of silence. That's not a trick, Isabella said. That's honesty. The hallway clock began to chime. Midnight. With each strike, Alaric grew more solid. His skin looked warmer. His eyes softened from silver to something almost human. When he took her hand, she felt it. Cold. Solid. Real. You're warm, he whispered as if she were a miracle. They stood there, ghost and girl, holding hands in a nearly empty room, while the city slept outside. What do you want to do with your hour? She asked. He smiled gently. I want to speak with someone who sees me. They talked until the clock struck 1. He told her of his death, of the accident, of centuries trapped between worlds. She told him of art school, rejection, failure, and fear. When the hour ended, he faded like mist, his voice lingering faintly. I am still here. In the morning, Isabella found a charcoal drawing on the floor beside her mattress. It showed her sleeping, perfectly detailed. In the corner, written in elegant script. You are real even when you sleep. She smiled. It wasn't a dream. And everything was about to change. The next night, Isabella tried to pretend she didn't care about the clock. She cleaned her brushes, organized her paints, and told herself she was not waiting. She was not counting minutes. She was not listening for the old hallway chimes like they were a heartbeat. But when the mansion grew quiet and the moonlight turned the floorboard silver, her hands started shaking anyway. She set a fresh canvas on the easel by the window. Not because she was inspired. Not because she felt brave. Only because her chest felt too full, and she didn't know what else to do with that feeling. The charcoal drawing still sat on her desk. She had studied it all day, tracing the careful lines with her eyes like it might explain what he was. A ghost with a landlord contract, 1 hour of life, and a voice that sounded lonely enough to break stone. Isabella told herself she was being practical. A cheap room was a cheap room. She needed shelter, not mysteries. Still, when the mansion clock began to chime, her breath caught in her throat. Midnight. The air in the room dropped several degrees. A soft pressure filled the space like the world was turning a page. Then he was there. Lord Alaric Nocturne stepped out of shadow, solidifying with each echo of the chimes. Tonight, he looked sharper, more defined, as though the house itself had gathered him into shape. His long dark hair was loose, his pale skin glowing faintly in the moonlight. His silver eyes found her immediately. You stayed, he said, quiet disbelief in his voice. I live here, Isabella answered, forcing her tone to sound casual. Remember? $1 a month. Alaric's mouth curved slightly, but it wasn't quite a smile. You are not afraid. I am afraid, she said honestly. I'm just more afraid of sleeping in my car again. Something softened in his expression. He walked closer, silent as always. His gaze flicked to the canvas on her easel. You are painting, he said. I'm trying, Isabella replied. My brain keeps telling me I'm stupid. So I'm ignoring it. His eyes lingered on her paint-stained fingers, on her tired face, the faint bruise-colored shadows beneath her eyes. Show me, he said. Isabella hesitated, then stepped aside. The canvas was half-finished, an abstract figure in cold blues and silvers, surrounded by empty space. It wasn't a portrait, but it carried a shape that felt like him. A lonely outline with too much silence around it. Alaric stared as if the painting had spoken his name. You painted the feeling of me, he whispered. Isabella swallowed. I painted what I couldn't stop thinking about. He turned toward her slowly. That is what real artists do. They paint what haunts them. The words should have sounded dramatic, maybe even silly, but coming from him they felt like truth. Like a judgment that mattered. She tried to shake it off. So, are you going to give me the full explanation now? His expression tightened. You deserve it. He stepped toward the window, the moonlight pooling around him as if it belonged to him. I told you I was dead, he said. That was not a lie. But it was not the whole truth. Isabella crossed her arms, bracing herself. Okay. Alaric's gaze stayed on the night sky. I am bound to this house. Not because I died here, but because I was sealed here. Sealed? Yes, he said. Like a curse placed on a thing that should not exist. Isabella's stomach tightened. Alaric. He finally looked at her. I am not a human ghost, Isabella. Her name on his lips sent a strange heat through her chest. But the words that followed made her blood run cold. I am a vampire. The room seemed to tilt. Isabella let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. No, that's not. Her voice cracked. She tried again. Vampires aren't real. Alaric's expression did not change. And you believed ghosts were not real yesterday. Isabella's hands clenched. If you're a vampire, why do you look like a ghost? Why can you only be solid 1 hour? He looked like he wanted to touch her, but he did not move too fast, as if sudden motions might scare her away. Because I was punished, he said. A vampire king does not become a spirit by accident. The words hit her like a quiet thunder. A vampire king? She repeated, almost laughing because it sounded impossible. Alaric bowed his head slightly, an old-world gesture heavy with pride and sorrow. In life I ruled, he said. Not a country as humans understand it. I ruled my people. The Nightborn. The ancient court. We lived hidden beneath the world you see. Isabella stared at him, trying to find a joke in his face, trying to find anything that told her he was pretending. But his eyes held no humor. Only a tired truth. What happened? She asked, voice smaller now. Alaric's jaw tightened. I tried to change the way my court treated humans. Isabella blinked. Change how? His eyes darkened. Many of my kind see humans as livestock or entertainment, or objects to be used. Isabella's mouth went dry. I did not, Alaric continued. I believed power meant responsibility. I believed immortality was not an excuse for cruelty. She could barely speak. So, you tried to stop them. Yes, he said. And for that, I was betrayed by those closest to me. The air around him felt heavier as he spoke, as if memory itself carried weight. My council accused me of weakness, he said. They called compassion a disease. They feared that if I continued, humans would be protected, and the old feeding rights would end. Isabella's fingers curled into her sleeves. That's horrible. Alaric's eyes glinted. They lured me here to this house built over an ancient seal. They used blood magic and sacred iron. They bound me between worlds, neither fully alive nor fully dead. He lifted his hand, palm upward. 1 hour at midnight is all I am permitted. A cruel allowance. A reminder of what I lost. Isabella's mind was spinning. How long have you been trapped? 312 years, he said. She stared at him, trying to imagine 300 years of silence. 300 years of watching the world change while you could not touch it. And suddenly she understood why his loneliness looked like pain. Why rent the room? She whispered. Alaric hesitated. The honesty in him seemed like a habit even when it cost him. Because the seal is weakening, he said. And the court is watching. Isabella's skin prickled. Watching? Yes, Alaric said. They know I can manifest. They know the curse shifts. If the barrier breaks, they will come to finish what they started. Isabella took a step back. So you're telling me I'm living in a cursed mansion and your vampire enemies might show up? I did not intend for you to be in danger, he said quickly, the first sharp edge of urgency in his voice. I searched for someone who might be able to see the seal's cracks. Someone sensitive. Someone whose soul could recognize the invisible. She stared. And you found me. Alaric's eyes softened. You were desperate enough to accept the impossible. Isabella felt anger flare through the fear. So you chose me because I had nowhere else to go. Alaric flinched like the word struck him. Yes, he admitted. And I am ashamed of it. The honesty disarmed her. She wanted to hate him for that. But she couldn't ignore the way he looked at her like he was afraid she would leave. Isabella turned away, pacing. This is insane. It is, he agreed softly. But it is also real. She stopped, forcing herself to breathe. Okay, she said finally, voice shaking. If your vampire court is watching, why haven't they come already? Alaric's gaze sharpened. Because they must enter through an invitation. Isabella blinked. Like old vampire rules? Yes, he said. This house is protected by human law as well as ancient law. A tenant's permission matters. She swallowed hard. So as long as I don't invite them. They cannot cross, he said. Not easily. Isabella felt her heart pounding. Then why are you telling me this? Because you deserve truth, he said. And because you must be careful. Isabella rubbed her arms, trying to steady herself. What does careful mean? Alaric's expression turned cold, not toward her, but toward the unseen world outside. It means do not speak with strangers at the gate, he said. Do not sign anything new without reading. Do not accept gifts. Do not open the front door after sunset unless you know who stands there. Isabella stared. This is my life now? Alaric stepped closer, stopping at a respectful distance. I did not want this for you, he said. But the world has already been unkind to you. This house is safer than the streets. Isabella let out a bitter laugh. Safer except for the vampire court. I will protect you, he said, and the words came out like a vow, ancient and absolute. She looked up at him, anger and fear twisting together. Oh, you only get 1 hour. Alaric's gaze held hers. Even as shadow I can see. I can hear. I cannot touch, but I can warn. Isabella's throat tightened. So you're basically my invisible guard dog. A faint smile touched his mouth. If that makes you feel better. For a moment the tension eased. Then the mansion creaked. Not the usual settling groan of old wood. This was different, like a weight shifting somewhere deep below. The air turned colder, and the candle she had lit near her desk flickered violently. Isabella froze. What was that? Alaric's face went still, every line sharp. The seal, he whispered. Isabella's pulse spiked. Is it breaking? Alaric's eyes flashed silver, brighter than before. Someone is pulling at it. The hallway clock ticked louder, like it wanted attention. The mansion felt suddenly awake. Isabella's voice dropped. Who? Alaric's jaw tightened. One of my council's hunters. She backed toward her desk. What do we do? Alaric moved with silent speed, crossing the room in an instant. He took her hand. His touch was colder tonight. Stronger too. Listen to me, he said. If anyone comes to you, if anyone claims to be from the landlord's office, the city, a bank, a gallery, anyone at all, you do not invite them inside. You do not confirm your name. You do not accept papers. Isabella stared. That sounds like human scams. Alaric's eyes held a grim understanding. Evil adapts. It always has. The candle went out. Darkness swallowed the room, but Alaric's pale face remained visible, lit by moonlight. He looked almost furious now, not at Isabella but at the unseen threat. Why now? Isabella whispered. Why are they coming now? Alaric's gaze dropped to her. Because you are here, he said. Because living warmth changes the house. Because your presence has made the barrier thinner. Isabella's breath caught. So I'm the reason? His voice softened. You are not to blame for existing. The words hit her harder than she expected. How many people had blamed her for existing? For being too poor, too emotional, too stubborn about art, too inconvenient, too easy to mock. Her eyes burned. She turned her face away quickly. Alaric lifted his hand hesitantly, like he wanted to wipe a tear that hadn't fallen yet. Isabella, he said quietly, I am sorry. She forced herself to speak. If they're pulling at the seal, does that mean they can get in? Alaric's mouth tightened. Not tonight. Not unless you let them. Isabella swallowed. Then I won't. Alaric looked at her sharply, surprised. She met his gaze, trembling but steady. I didn't survive sleeping in my car and being treated like garbage just to hand over my life to a monster at the door. If they want in, they can rot outside. For the first time, Alaric looked genuinely stunned. Then something like pride appeared in his eyes. You are braver than you believe, he said. Isabella scoffed weakly. I'm just stubborn. Alaric's voice dropped. Stubbornness is often the first form of courage. The hallway clock began to chime again, a warning that time was moving too fast. Isabella felt panic rise. Your hour is almost over. Alaric's eyes softened. Yes. She surprised herself by stepping closer. What happens when you disappear? What if they come while you're shadow? Alaric's gaze held hers with quiet intensity. Then you will hear me. Isabella frowned. But you said I can't hear you when you're shadow. Alaric's mouth tightened. Not usually. He hesitated, then spoke carefully. But the bond between us is growing. You see me. You speak to me. You do not run. That changes things. Isabella's chest tightened. Bond? Alaric's eyes flicked to her lips for a fraction of a second, then back to her eyes as if he hated his own instinct. Yes, he said softly. And that bond may become dangerous. Isabella's voice barely worked. Dangerous for who? For you, he said. Because my court will not only want to destroy me. They will want to use you. Her stomach turned. Use me how? Alaric's voice turned colder. As leverage. As bait. As a tool to force an invitation. Isabella's hands clenched. So I'm a target now. Alaric stepped even closer, stopping just short of touching her face. His expression was controlled, but his eyes looked haunted. I will not allow them to harm you, he said. Even if it costs me what little existence I have left. Isabella stared at him. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not her family. Not her ex. Not her bosses who treated her like she was replaceable. The mansion clock struck 1. Alaric's body began to fade, turning translucent at the edges. Isabella's throat tightened. Wait. Alaric's eyes stayed locked on hers. Do not open the door after sunset, he repeated, voice already hollowing as the curse reclaimed him. And Isabella. What? His face softened with a kind of gentle sadness she didn't know how to survive. Thank you, he whispered. For not treating me like a monster the moment you learned what I am. Then he vanished. The room felt instantly colder. Dear. Isabella stood alone in the moonlight, her heart racing, the silence pressing in again. But this time the silence did not feel empty. It felt watched. She locked her door twice, then sat on her mattress with her knees pulled to her chest. The mansion creaked below like something moving in the walls. She tried to convince herself she was imagining it. Then she heard it. A faint sound at the front gate. Metal scraping metal. Someone was out there. Isabella held her breath, every nerve screaming at her to hide. She crept to the window and pulled the curtain back just enough to peek. A figure stood near the gate, tall, dressed in a dark coat. The street light should have revealed a face. But the light seemed to bend away from him. Slowly, the figure lifted its head, and even from this distance, Isabella felt the weight of its gaze. Then she saw the smile. Not friendly. Not human. A smile that looked like hunger. Her phone buzzed on the desk at the same moment. A new email notification. Subject line. Important update regarding your lease agreement. Isabella's blood turned to ice. She didn't open it. She didn't move. Outside, the figure at the gate raised a hand slowly as if waving. Then the mansion's front door handle turned. Not fully. Just a test. Like someone checking whether she would be foolish enough to invite them in. Isabella backed away from the window, shaking violently. In the silence she heard something else now. A whisper, faint and hollow like wind through an empty room. Isabella, the voice said. Alaric. I told you, the whisper continued. Do not open the door. Isabella pressed her hand over her mouth to stop herself from sobbing. And in that moment she understood the truth. Her life wasn't just poor and broken anymore. It was supernatural, dangerous, and tied to a vampire king who had started to matter to her far more than was safe. Isabella did not sleep that night. She sat on her mattress with the lights off, her phone face down on the desk, the unopened email burning in her mind like a threat. Every sound in the mansion felt sharper now. Every creak of wood sounded intentional. Outside, the figure at the gate eventually disappeared. The street returned to its empty stillness, but the feeling of being watched did not leave. When dawn finally came, pale and weak through the north-facing windows, Isabella felt hollowed out. She still had to live. Bills did not stop for vampire courts. Hunger did not pause for curses. Fear did not excuse missed work. She showered, dressed, and left the mansion just after sunrise, locking the door behind her like she was sealing herself inside a fragile lie of normalcy. The cafe smelled like burnt coffee and impatience. Her manager barely looked at her when she clocked in. You're late, he said even though she wasn't. Isabella bit her tongue. She needed this job. The morning rush was cruel. Customers snapped their fingers, complained about prices, mocked her accent when she misspoke from exhaustion. One woman scoffed at the paint stains on her hands. Maybe focus on a real career instead of pretending to be an artist, the woman said loudly, making sure others heard. Isabella forced a smile and apologized. Inside something cracked. By noon her phone buzzed again. Another email. Same subject line. Important update regarding your lease agreement. She didn't open it. During her break, she checked her bank account. Negative balance. The last gallery she had submitted to sent a rejection email within minutes of each other. Polite words. Empty encouragement. She felt small. Invisible. That night, she returned to the mansion with shaking hands. The front gate stood open. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She stood frozen on the sidewalk, staring at the dark mouth of the property. Don't panic, she whispered to herself. You're not invited. They can't come in. She closed the gate firmly behind her and hurried inside, locking the door. The moment midnight arrived, the air shifted violently. Alaric appeared faster than before, his form snapping into solidity as if summoned by urgency rather than time. His eyes were no longer soft silver. They burned like polished steel. You were followed, he said immediately. Isabella's breath caught. I knew it. They are testing you, he continued. Fear, pressure, humiliation. These are tools my court uses well. She laughed weakly. Great. They picked the right target. Alaric's gaze sharpened. Do not diminish yourself. She looked away. Easy for an immortal king to say. Silence fell between them. Not heavy. Observant. Then Alaric spoke quietly. They contacted you. Isabella nodded. Emails. Fake lease updates. Someone was at the gate last night. Alaric closed his eyes for a brief moment, like he was restraining something violent. A hunter, he said. Sent to break you. Why not just kill me, she asked. His eyes opened fierce. Because they cannot. Not without permission. She hugged herself. So they want me to give it. Yes, he said. Or to bind you to them. Her stomach twisted. How? Alaric hesitated. Through contracts. Through favors. Through promises of security. Isabella let out a shaky breath. That sounds human. Evil often borrows human faces, he said. She stared at him. Why are you telling me all this now? Because you are stronger than you think, he said. And because tonight you will be tested. Her heart skipped. Tested how? As if summoned by the words, a knock echoed through the mansion. 3 slow taps on the front door. Isabella froze. Alaric moved instantly, positioning himself between her and the door. His presence filled the room now, not cold but commanding. Do not answer, he said. The knock came again. Polite. Patient. A voice followed. Smooth. Friendly. Miss Moreno? I'm here regarding your lease. Just a few details to clarify. Isabella's hands trembled violently. Alaric leaned close, his voice barely more than breath. Do not speak. Silence denies them power. The door handle rattled gently. Not forcing. Asking. We can help you, the voice continued. Your debts. Your job. Your art career. Isabella squeezed her eyes shut. You deserve better, the voice said softly. All you have to do is invite us in. Something snapped. Isabella stepped forward. Alaric caught her wrist instantly. No. She shook her head, tears burning. I'm tired of being treated like I'm disposable. The knock stopped. Silence pressed against the door. Then the voice spoke again, colder now. You think the Vampire King protects you? He cannot even touch the world properly. Alaric's grip tightened. The air around him vibrated. Isabella, he said urgently, look at me. She did. His eyes were no longer silver. They were crimson. Ancient. Powerful. I was not sealed because I was weak, he said. I was sealed because I refused to become cruel. Her breath hitched. You are not powerless, he continued. They target you because your kindness disrupts them. Your existence weakens the seal they rely on. The door shuddered once hard. The friendly mask outside dropped. Open the door, the voice hissed. Isabella straightened. Her fear did not vanish, but it no longer ruled her. No, she said clearly. The word echoed through the mansion like a bell. Outside something snarled. The house trembled. Walls groaned. The seal flared, invisible but alive. Alaric cried out, dropping to one knee. Shadows ripped across his body like cracks in glass. Isabella rushed to him. Alaric. They are pulling harder, he gasped. Using my pain. She grabbed his hands, ignoring the cold, the impossible truth of him. Then stop holding back, she said. His eyes snapped to hers. What? You said you were punished for mercy, she continued, voice shaking but fierce. That doesn't mean you stopped being king. The words landed like a blade sliding into place. Alaric's breathing slowed. His posture straightened. You would accept what I am? He asked softly. She nodded. I already do. The mansion roared. Power surged through Alaric, no longer restrained. His form solidified fully, shadows bowing away from him. Ancient symbols flared along the walls, glowing red and silver. Outside, the hunter screamed. The front door did not open. It did not need to. The seal answered its true master. The pressure vanished. The house settled. Silence returned, deep and absolute. Alaric stood tall now, no longer flickering. His presence felt overwhelming, regal, terrifying. Then he turned to Isabella. And softened. You defended me, he said quietly. She wiped her tears. You defended me first. They stood there, breathing in the aftermath. Alaric reached out, hesitated, then gently cupped her face. You have changed the balance, he said. The court will not stop now. Isabella leaned into his touch. Then neither will I. For the first time in centuries, Alaric smiled without sadness. The mansion did not sleep after that night. Neither did Isabella. Something fundamental had shifted. The air inside the house felt heavier, charged, like the pause before a storm. The walls no longer merely watched. They listened. The seal that had once been a prison now felt like a heartbeat, slow but strong, responding to Alaric's presence. And Alaric himself was different. When midnight came, he no longer arrived like a visitor borrowing time. He arrived like a ruler stepping into his domain. His form solidified instantly, no flickering, no hesitation. His eyes burned with restrained power, crimson threaded with silver, ancient and controlled. You should not have done that, he said quietly. Isabella sat on the edge of her mattress, exhausted but resolute. You mean not standing up to them? Yes, he replied. They will retaliate. She shrugged weakly. They already were. Alaric studied her for a long moment. You do not fear consequences. I do, she said. I just fear living like I don't matter more. Those words cut deeper than any spell. 4 days the pressure intensified. At the cafe, Isabella was suddenly written up for small mistakes she hadn't made. A coworker accused her of stealing tips. Management threatened termination. Then came the gallery email. A prestigious exhibition. Sudden interest. Too sudden. Alaric read it over her shoulder, his jaw tightening. A trap. They're offering everything I've wanted, Isabella whispered. Money. Exposure. Security. And obedience, Alaric said. That night the hunter returned. This time he did not knock. He stood at the gate, visible now, elegant and smiling, dressed like a gentleman with eyes too old to be human. Miss Moreno, he called softly. We admire your resilience. Isabella stood at the window, heart racing. You deserve protection, the hunter continued. A patron. A place in the world. Alaric stepped beside her, his presence filling the room. She already has both. The hunter's smile widened. From a broken king who cannot even leave his cage? The insult struck deep. Alaric did not move. He did not rage. He simply spoke. You mistake restraint for weakness, he said. The seal ignited. Symbols burned through the mansion walls, ancient and absolute. The ground beneath the gate cracked as power surged upward, binding, crushing, undeniable. The hunter screamed as shadows wrapped around him, dragging him to his knees. You have no claim here, Alaric declared. No invitation. No authority. Isabella stepped forward, voice trembling but clear. And you don't get to decide my worth. The seal answered her. Light erupted, forcing the hunter back, stripping away his glamour, revealing a creature hollowed by cruelty and hunger. Alaric raised his hand. For centuries, he said, voice echoing beyond the house, you ruled through fear and entitlement. Tonight, judgment returns. The shadows consumed the hunter completely, sealing him away where he could never reach another human again. Silence fell. Alaric staggered. The effort had cost him dearly. Isabella caught him as his strength faltered. Stay with me, she whispered. He looked at her with something close to awe. You anchored me. The mansion shuddered one final time, then changed. The curse fractured, cracks glowing with warm light instead of shadow. The seal is broken, Alaric breathed. Not destroyed. Transformed. What does that mean? Isabella asked. It means I am no longer bound by punishment, he said. Only by choice. Slowly, deliberately, Alaric stepped toward the window. Then the door. And for the first time in 3 centuries he crossed the threshold freely. Isabella stared, tears streaming down her face. You're free, she whispered. He turned back to her, eyes no longer crimson but silver gold, gentle and powerful. Because you chose courage over fear, he said. Because you treated a monster like a man. The vampire court never came again. Word spread through the night world that the King of Mercy had returned, not as a tyrant but as a judge. Feeding laws changed. Humans were protected. The old cruelty became punishable. As for Isabella, the cafe fired her. She smiled and walked out. The gallery that had tried to trap her collapsed under scandal weeks later. Another gallery, smaller but honest, showcased her work. Her paintings sold. Not because they were safe, because they were real. And every night she returned home. Not to a haunted house. To a sanctuary. Alaric never rushed her. Never claimed her. He loved her through actions, through protection, through listening, through respect. When he finally asked her to stand beside him, it was not as property. It was as his equal. You were never weak, he told her once. The world was simply unworthy of your kindness. She believed him. Because the most powerful being she had ever known saw her, and chose her.